So in this series, we're going to cover 6 key areas of general contracting. All right, man. So communication and coordination for the general contracting.
Oof. Yeah, this is,
Let's hit it.
yeah. I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes we could go down, but like, if we just define this at the overarching level, a general contractor is responsible for the entirety of the project, and that takes a ton of communication back and forth between parties and coordination of their activities, right? So not everybody's all over each other, right? And you don't have, heaven forbid this would ever happen. This would be a bad general contractor if they did, but you don't have your drywall guy in there at the same time that your site excavator is, right?
Yeah,
That just doesn't make sense, right? You're digging in the dirt. You're not ready to put drywall in.
Right.
So that coordination, that's a very dumb example of what I hope would never happen. But like that sort of overlap is what needs to be managed. If you're a hired general contractor, you're responsible to the owner to make sure they understand what's going on, right? What the schedule is. Many times in like a larger commercial general contracting setting, there's probably weekly meetings that happen with the owner and the general contractor, maybe some of the key subs that are on site at times. In a past life of mine, like I was able to be a part of those, and those are that sort of communication is good to make sure everyone's staying in the know.
Okay.
And so I think you can apply that on a broad scale. That should be applied. That sort of rigor and transparency in communication, no matter how big the project is, or even if you have a hired general contractor and maybe you're doing it yourself, that sort of communication expectation should be there to make sure everybody's staying in the know. Right. Of how the schedule's coming along, how we're progressing, what's going to be happening next, what sub needs to come in and start their work or be preparing for their work or whatever that may be. I'll maybe speak to the coordination side of it. It's not just about making sure everyone's in the know, but that there's a good order and sequence to things, right? I use the dumb example of drywall in when your excavator's going on, but as you progress through your schedule, there's a way you can expedite schedules where as a contractor, let's maybe, say your spray foam guy, right? You get most of in an example of post frame, you get most of your shell built, right? And maybe your builder is just working on the outside and framing the porch or whatever. And maybe your concrete's already been done. You could bring your spray foam guy in and have him start maybe on a different end of the building, right? So there's not just a bunch of overlap of, cords and generators and all this, the materials they're going to need. And so there's good coordination principles that need to happen in that. So let me make this more of a specific example versus a theoretical example. Okay. Right. We experience this sometimes, and it can get pretty frustrating. We're not quite done finishing the shell of the building. And a general contractor, or maybe the owner, if they're the general contractor, they have let's say their plumber come in and they start trenching from where the well maybe is or wherever the water source is going to be. They start trenching and they dig this big old trench up to the building, go underneath the building and start running their undergrounds and stub ups. And while we're trying to finish that exterior, now there's this massive trench on one side of the building
that they got to work around.
Yeah, that's really interrupted traffic flow, right, and equipment flow. And so that might be a cause for a change order of like, oh my goodness, Mr. General Contractor.
Yeah.
The way you're managing this project is inhibiting the work of subs as we want to get our work done quickly.
Yeah.
So you might actually infuse some cost if the coordination's not done super well. So that's not a scare tactic of like, you better make sure everything's perfect. Like, I mean, this is construction at the end of the day, but that is the role of a general contractor. Make sure people are informed, right? Up to the owner, right? If there is an owner on the job, throughout all the subcontractors on how the schedule is going and how things are progressing and who needs to be going in when, and having an effective coordination plan for how all of that whole dance is going to go, right, throughout the life of the project. So,
well, I know we haven't covered everything yet, but would you almost say communication and coordination, that's like the most important?
I mean, yeah.
Almost. I would. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. You're probably right.
You got to make sure communication.
It's hard to say one of these is like way outperforms another.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Because you have a general contractor that doesn't communicate. Your owner's going to be mad.
Yeah.
They're not going to know what's going on. Are we on schedule? Are we off? Are my costs running? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right. How's the quality of everything going? Whatever. And you have a general contractor that does a bad job at coordinating and all these subs are in here, or even let's go to the other extreme, like there's a month where nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Because the next guy wasn't called, or that, who's ever coming up
Supposed to
in
be
the
there.
schedule,
Yeah.
back to procurement and even just keeping things moving, all those activities we got off in time. And so now there's this delay because we didn't actually get that plumber.
Yeah.
We didn't get on his schedule to know he's got to be over here at this time. And so, yeah, you can either delay things pretty fast, or you can really start to like smush it together with all of, a cesspool of contractors going, on the job site at one time that really might create some extra costs.
Yeah.
If you're not careful. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's a fair statement.
All right, good. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe for more post-frame content. Be sure to stay tuned for our next one, where we're going to talk about construction management.